I'm Piyush and I'm going to be a host in this webinar today. I see a lot of you are still joining in, so I would like to ensure that my voice is audible to all of you before I get started. So do let me know if my voice is audible to all of you. Okay, I see a good number of people are already here. So let's quickly understand whether my voice is audible to people or not. Okay, I don't see any votes yet. I don't know whether there's a delay. Okay, I have not published the vote. My bad, guys. Just respond to this poll. If you can hear me loud and clear, I thought that I had enabled the polling, but I had not. So now I can see the votes coming in. That's great, guys. Thank you so much for letting me know that my voice is audible to all of you. Let me get to know you guys a little better, because before I proceed, I would like to know about you guys, that when are you planning to take the GMAT and since how long have you been preparing? So I'm going to share a couple of polls. So this is the first poll where I want to know, like, since how long have you guys been preparing for the GMAT? Let's quickly get to see some responses. Okay, I see some votes coming in. Let's wait for a few more to come in. Okay, I see people are still voting. That is good. Let's wait for a few more votes. All right. More or less the votes are stabilized now. So I'm going to end this poll in 5 seconds. In case you have not responded to it yet, please do so now. All right. So I see the votes are stable now. Great. So I see a fair 30% of the batch has either not started their prep or have just started their prep in, like, it has been less than 1 month. So fairly new to your prep. Again, you are definitely going to learn a few things on the webinar in terms of what you should not do when you are going to prepare. Definitely. And this is going to help you a lot. And there are about 40+% people who have been preparing for 4 months or more. So again, guys, for you who has been preparing for 4 months or more, this webinar is going to be a lot more helpful, because it will help you understand what could have gone wrong in your prep, what you probably need to change with your prep in order to get to the target score. Okay, so that is good. I would quickly ask one more poll. I know there are a lot of polls that I'm asking now, but just want to understand the entire batch. Since when are you planning to take the GMAT, guys? When are you planning to take the GMAT? This is going to be the last poll, and then we are going to move forward in the webinar. In fact, as you respond to this poll, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Piyush. Those of you who don't know me, I'm a strategy consultant at GMATWiz, and I have been working in the education sector for more than 9 years now, and I've helped lots of people achieve their dream scores and get into their dream B schools across the globe. So personally, I love interacting with students, helping them out, understand how they can strategize their prep, and I also love working with data. So that is slight bit about me. I see that you guys have voted to the polls. Okay, so about 50% or more plan to take the GMAT by June. I am assuming that is by before round 1. In fact, the next highest percentage is 27%, which says that, okay, I want to take it in July or August. So yeah, so I see that most of you are here to take the GMAT by round 1. Don't worry, we will be covering how you can actually achieve those results before round 1. Okay, so in this webinar, there are going to be 3 parts of this overall webinar. First part, where we are going to take 5 minutes to tell you who we are, who are we at GMATWiz, what is that we do. And then second part of the webinar, where we're going to spend majority of our time, about an hour, we'll focus on how can you improve your score by 100 plus points, 40 days. And then in the third part, I'll open it up for an open-ended Q&A where you can ask any question that you might have around your prep. So quickly getting on to who we are. So at GMATWiz, we have created a course which is world's only truly personalized course. And we take pride in it because a lot of courses tell that they are personalized, but in reality, they just give everyone the same content. And there is very less personalization which is there. Because we felt that in order to personalize the course content in an affordable manner, it is very important that it uses artificial intelligence, it uses technology to leverage the strengths and weakness analysis of the students and get them the right insights according to that. And that's why we built up a course using AI where you actually get a personalized study plan. Every student at GMAT gets a personalized study plan, which is different for them for compared to any other student out there, which actually tells you what is that you do on a particular week, every single week, back to back. And even the course content that is served to you is actually changing in real time. We give you real time improvement modules based on your strengths and weaknesses. That is something that we take pride in, because it is the only platform in the world which has the capability to actually change the course content based on your strengths and your weaknesses. So the course content which will be served to you will be very different from what is served to other people. And if you take up the complete package from our side, which is the quant and verbal package combined, you also get access to a dedicated mentor whom you can speak to every 15 to 20 days to get your progress assessed and monitored, to seek their advices on how to proceed further. And this is one of the biggest reasons why we have been GMAT Club's most effective course when it comes to average score improvement. This data is slightly dated, but even today, we have 106 points average score improvement, whereas the other competitors are pretty much well below 100 points overall. Okay, this goes to say that how effective our course has been today. Okay, so with that, let's move to the main part of the webinar. Now I'm going to talk about this basically the improvement strategy. How can you improve your GMAT score by 100 plus points in the next 40 days? Okay, so that is what we are going to talk about now. Now, how we have structured this is we'll talk about two things. Okay, first is what generally people do. What I mean by this is that what most of the people do when it comes to improving their GMAT score. What is the strategy that generally people follow? And then we will talk about what they should follow. Okay, now there's a big difference between these two, because I'm pretty sure that in most of the cases, what happens is that when people think about improvement, they have very little clue about what is the right strategy. And in fact, there are many actually posts and articles on the web which say that, okay, you just do this and do that. But in reality, most of those things don't work out. And in the end, people struggle by hitting a score plateau. So we will first talk about what students do to understand why those things don't work out, because you should not just take my words for it. I will tell you the rationale why those things don't work out, and then we will understand what works out properly. Okay, so okay, I have a question from Anubhav. Just give me 1 second. I'll read it, guys. So Anubhav, your question is actually very personal, honestly, and it's not related to the topic that we are discussing right now. So, but I will take it up more in the Q&A part of the webinar, or you can ask me later on a personal call. But in simple terms, just to give you a quick idea, your work experience should be considered if you are taking any money from it, and at least some salary on there, something like that. And dual MBA generally is beneficial if you think that you're not able to generate that value from the first MBA. Again, as I said, I'll talk about it later in the Q&A part in more details. Okay, so let's move to what students do. So generally, the most common thing, and let me ask you guys, those of you who are been preparing for 3 months or more, what is that you are doing in order to improve your score? What is that you are doing as of now? And guys, I want this to be an interactive webinar, so I'm not going to be just speaking from my side. I would be asking questions, and I want you guys to respond and interact with me. Okay, so do tell me, what is that you are doing right now to improve your scores? Let's hear from you guys. What is that you are doing right now? Okay, Taylor says I'm doing lots of OG questions, lots of GMAT club questions. Dhaval says I'm practicing more. Okay, what about others? Nirmesh says I'm working on my weak areas. Zaya says regular practice from different sites and take weekly tests. Okay, Chinelo says I'm refreshing the concepts. Shrey says I'm practicing and giving mocks, although no improvement. Okay, that is something which I'm going to talk about, Shrey. Yes, practicing questions is what Rutu says. Akansha says Manhattan guys. Okay, revisiting weak areas is what Abhijit says. Okay, Chirag says visiting my error logs again and again and revising my strategy. Okay, so very common points. Most people, what they do is, and in fact that is common between what you guys are also saying, is that I'm practicing questions. That's what I'm doing. Like I'm just doing more and more practice. Practice from this website, practice from that website, GMAT Club, OG. That's the most common thing which people do. Second most common thing which people do is that they take mock tests. Okay, let's take more mocks because they feel that, okay, GMAT is all about test taking strategy. I'm struggling to solve questions within a certain amount of time. So probably if I do the mocks more, then it is gonna help me get to my target score because I'll probably understand how to pace myself during the test and all of that. So that is something which a lot of people also do. Third most common thing is concept building, that okay, they focus on the weak areas and just work on their concepts and basically work around that mostly. So these are three most things that people do overall. Okay, and it's kind of common with what most of you were saying. But there's a big problem with this thing. The biggest problem is that most people think that practicing questions is generally enough. Now, that is generally because of our upbringing. When we are in school, we feel that, okay, the more we practice, like we hear this thing, the practice makes a man perfect. So we kind of focus on practicing. But what we don't realize is, again, I'm not saying practicing is not right, but what we don't realize is if you are practicing, it is helpful, but it does not improve your score unless you understand what is the underlying gap which is there in your approach. Think of it like this. If I don't know how to do it right, and I can, or let's say if I'm doing something incorrectly, the more I practice, the better I become at doing that incorrectly. The more I practice, the more mistakes I do. Now, you might think that, okay, I'll learn from my mistakes. But if you really want to practice, first, you need to ensure that you have learned the right methods, and then only you should go and practice. So that is something which is very, very important. Okay. So Chinola says, I stopped practicing questions because it was demoralizing and I kept failing the questions. I started instead to go back and learn the concept first and plan to take mock after 1 month. That's a good thing, Chinola. I actually agree with that. You should always focus on learning things right. And that's what I'm saying. If you just do practice without realizing what is actually missing out in your prep, that is not going to help you improve your score. Practice only makes sense once you have your basics and your application in place. Both the things are important, concepts as well as application. So we're going to talk about both the things. Like some people don't know what application really means, but I'm going to talk about that. Don't worry. See, we need to also understand how the GMAT algorithm works, because most people think that, okay, if I practice, I get a better accuracy and I can actually do well on the test. But in reality, the GMAT algorithm is a very different test altogether. GMAT is a very different test altogether. You do not have the option of selecting questions. And Abhijit has a question. He says, how much accuracy should we aim for? Abhijit, the entire point of me talking about the GMAT algorithm is to tell you that accuracy is the wrong metric to look at if you're looking at like GMAT. Okay. So Rupal, I'm going to tell you how can you strengthen concepts. Hold your thoughts. Don't worry about it. That's going to be covered. But accuracy is the wrong metric to look at GMAT. And I'll tell you, just demonstrate with a very simple example. For those of you who are very new with, like, let me ask you this question. How many of you are not very sure of how the GMAT algorithm works? How many of you are not very sure of how the GMAT algorithm works? A quick yes, no in this poll. If you know how the algorithm really works in depth, say a yes. If you are not really sure of how it works, say a no. Okay, I'll wait for a few votes. If you're not really sure how the GMAT algorithm works, select a no. Otherwise, select a yes. If you're sure that, okay, this is how the algorithm works, select a yes. Okay. See votes coming in. Yashpreet, you can actually vote in the poll directly instead of typing in the chat. Chirag, you can do that, the same thing. Okay. Okay, great. Let me end the poll. Around 40% of you don't know it. 60% of you say, yes, I understand. Rutu says, I've watched so many videos, but still confused about the algorithm. No worries, guys. I'm pretty sure that those of you who also know about the GMAT, they think they know about the GMAT, you're probably gonna have a different learning together? And I'm going to ask that towards the end also. Did you get to learn something new? So let's do a very simple exercise. In order to help you understand how the algorithm works, I'm going to give you a very simple example. This is probably a very simplified version, not the how real algorithm works, but just to make the point clear. So what generally happens is when you start the test, you always start at a medium difficulty level. So let's say, let's take a student. He started at a medium difficulty level. So he gets a medium question in the beginning and he gets it right. Okay. So once he gets it right, the next question which is served to him is of medium hard difficulty. And that's what adaptive algorithm means. Basically, the level of difficulty of the questions that you get is dependent on your accuracy on the previous question. If you get a question right, the next question or the next set of questions that you get are going to be more difficult. Okay. So that's what happens with this student. He gets a more difficult question, which is a medium hard question. Now he gets this question right as well, because of which the next question that is served to him is a hard question. Okay. So now he gets this question right as well. So the next question that is served to him stays at hard difficulty. There's nothing beyond that. So it's another hard question, which he gets wrong. So the next question which is served to him is easy, medium, hard, and that one also he gets wrong. Now, what I want you guys to tell me is what is the accuracy of this student and what is the score of this student? You can look at the y-axis to see the scores given to medium, hard, and hard questions. Tell me what is his accuracy and what is his score. Tell me that in the chat. Tell me that in the chat. What is the accuracy of this student and what is the score? Simple math, guys. Okay. Shrey says accuracy 60%. What about the score, Shrey? Score is 12. Vartika says good point. 60% and 12 current. Good. Shrey, good. Really happy to see that. Yeah, 3 out of 5 questions correct. Accuracy is 60% and the score is 12 points, which is evident from this attempt. Okay. Simple enough, very easy to understand. Let's take another example. Let's take another student. Okay, this guy also starts with a medium difficulty. That's what GMAT does. You get a medium difficulty question to start with. Now, he gets the first question wrong. Now, what happens is the next question which is served to him is slightly easier. It's an easy medium question. And sadly, he gets that question wrong as well. So, obviously, the next question which is going to be served to him is gonna be easy. Okay, so it will actually get you an easy question which he gets right. So obviously the next question which you get is an easy medium question and he gets that one right as well. So the last question is the medium question. So like this is the trend for the second student. Now you check his accuracy and his score. Take a minute and tell me what is this accuracy of the second student and what is the score of the student. So Chinelo has a question point in the meantime. He says, okay, if you fail the medium to easy questions at the beginning of the test, it hurts your overall score as you will not get hard questions which scores higher. Yes, very good, very well said. Exactly. Tushar says 60%, 6 points. Akshay says the same. Great, guys. Exactly the point. This student, what you need to understand is this student also has a 60% accuracy. Both of these guys have a 60% accuracy. Okay. And the number of points is 12 versus 6. Himani, I've actually told the points over here. I've mentioned the number of points for each difficulty over here. So you can look at that and understand it. Again, GMAT does not reveal the marks assigned to each difficulty level, but yeah, obviously the harder questions are assigned more value than the easier questions. That is for sure. Now, this is a very simplified example. GMAT does not adapt after every question. It adapts after a set of questions, a block of questions of 3 or 4, and it adapts more towards the left of the test than the right of the test, as in it adapts more in the beginning and not so much so at the end. Again, it's very tough to actually explain all of it in this webinar, and it's not like I'm gonna cover the GMAT algorithm webinar today, but just to give you an idea, this is how the GMAT algorithm works. Okay, so Akshay, does it mean we can give some extra time to first few questions? So Akshay, that is as an assumption basically that you make, that if you give extra time, you get questions right. That is not necessarily true. In reality, that is very rarely true. I would say just don't take the first few questions leniently, or okay, I would say be careful when you're solving them. That's all. Okay. Does it mean that we should be super cautious in the first 5 to 6 questions of a section and spend 2 minutes on each, even if we feel we answer quickly and move on? So yeah, you should not answer something quickly. I won't say you should spend extra time. I would say you should be cautious. So I agree with that cautious part. Don't try to rush through them just because they are simple questions. Okay. So I don't think GMAT factors the time spent on answering the question. That is something like GMAT does not reveal it, but I don't think from my understanding that happens. Okay, so as I said, this is a simplified example which I wanted you guys to see. What it tells us that accuracy is the wrong metric to look at. And let us actually now illustrate the same thing through a more real example. So this is the enhanced score report which GMAT provides. Okay, and this is the verbal section of my own enhanced score report. Like this is my first attempt on GMAT which I took, and this shows what the total number of mistakes that I made. So I made a total of 7 mistakes in the verbal section, and my verbal score was 41. Okay. Okay, this is what this ESR tells me. And it gives us the distribution of the number of mistakes in first, second, third, and fourth quarter. So this is the first quarter. This is the second quarter. So this is where the test began, and this is where the test ended in simple terms. Okay, so that's what it tells us. I made 2 mistakes in the first quarter, 2 in the second, 0 in the third, and 3 in the last. Now let's move to another ESR report. So I'm going to show you one more ESR. So you have the ESR of this guy on the bottom left of your screen. This guy has made 8 mistakes. Okay, and I want you guys to look at his ESR and tell me how much, like what would be the verbal score of this student. And you can see I made 7 mistakes. I had a verbal 41. So if you want to take that as a baseline, you can take that as a baseline. And if I want you to guess what is the verbal score of this student who made 8 mistakes. Okay, I'm giving you a minute to guess because it might take you a little time to think about it. I'm giving you a minute to guess, and I'll be muted in this time. So yeah, you have 1 minute to decide. Okay, so I see a lot of votes. Let me end the poll now. Okay, so I see that most of you think that the score should be between 31 and 37. A good number of you are going for 31 to 33. A good number of you are going for 34 to 35 and 36 to 37 as well. Some of you say it should be 38 to 39, and some of you say be 40 or more. Okay, guys, no worries. Let me actually give you another ESR. You have one more ESR on the right side, on the bottom right now. This guy has made 9 mistakes. Okay, and I want you to tell me what could be the verbal score of this particular student. What do you think is the verbal score of this particular student? Let's see what do you guys think. 9 mistakes. I had 7 mistakes. I got a verbal 41. What do you think about this guy? Okay, I'm happy to see the responses for this one. Okay, let me end the poll now. I see most of you going for 31 to 33. Okay, great, guys. Let me now reveal the scores of both the students to you. The first student, the one on the bottom left that you see, this guy actually scored a verbal 30. Just a verbal 30. Compare that with that verbal 41. You have 7 mistakes here. You have 8 mistakes here. You look at the difference between the scores. 30 versus 41. 11-point difference just because of 1 extra mistake. Why do you think that happened? Why do you think that happened? 11 points difference just because of 1 extra mistake. Why do you think that happened, guys? Can anyone tell me? Think about it. Tell me. Okay, you can type in the chat if you want to. Why do you think that happened? 1 extra question wrong, and we are looking at 11 points difference in the score. Computer adaptive, yes, Preet says, okay. But just 1 extra difference. Yeah, quarter 1 mistakes, early questions, more mistakes initially is what Akshay says. Yes, first part is wrong, more mistakes in the first quarter. Great point, guys. We looked at a very simple example earlier on where we saw that same accuracies, they're very different scores. And the same thing is happening over here. You look at the number of mistakes made by this student in the first quarter. A couple of mistakes were made here. And there are a total of 4 mistakes which are made by this particular student. And I'm pretty sure that a good number of these 4 mistakes are actually made in the very beginning of the test itself. And I'll elaborate that. But you'll be actually shocked to see that the third student basically has scored a verbal 21. Look at this, 21, 41, 21 versus 41, and just 2 extra mistakes. So I think Abhijit, you asked that how many mistakes can I make? What is the accuracy that I should look at? Look at this. Like accuracy is probably the wrong metric to check out. Okay, so if you understand this, 8, 7, 8, and 9 mistakes, the verbal scores I'm writing down over here: verbal 41, verbal 30, and verbal 21. But if you look at the difference in percentiles, that is huge, guys. That is huge. That could be the difference between a 600 and a 750 as well. It's that huge, guys, from the first to the third student. Why does that happen? It happens because of this. Look at this accuracy level chart. You look at the chart of this first student. He made 2 mistakes over here. Like the first quarter, this student made 2 mistakes, and the one who got a verbal 30 made 4 mistakes. But you look at the average difficulty of the questions that the first student got wrong. You look at the average difficulty of the questions that the second student got wrong. He probably made the mistakes at the very beginning of the test itself. So most of his mistakes were made at the very beginning, because of which the algorithm reduced the difficulty level of the questions later on. So even though he had a 50% accuracy, the questions that he got right were slightly easier, much more easier. On the other hand, this student made 2 mistakes, but the mistakes were on slightly harder questions. So he did not make the mistakes in the beginning, and he was able to tell the algorithm that I have the capability of getting the hard questions also. So the algorithm served him hard questions. In the second quarter also, he made mistakes with easier questions overall. So the algorithm thought that, okay, the difficulty level of if you look at the difficulty level of the correct attempts for the first student in the first quarter and the second quarter is at this level. For the second student, on the other hand, scored a verbal 41, the accuracy, the correct questions that he got, the average difficulty of the correct questions is at this level. Okay, you compare them side by side. This is the difference. What does it tell us? This tells us not just that you have to get the easy questions right, guys. That is not the only thing. Understand this, guys. It is not just about getting the first quarter questions right. It is also about making sure that you are able to get the medium high questions right as well and hard questions right as well. You should be able to portray a consistency in your accuracy on more difficult questions. Okay. So Karan says, but isn't it surprising that even in a relatively long test of 36 questions, he wasn't able to recover from Q10 to Q36 despite such a good accuracy in those? So Karan, as I said, the GMAT algorithm is a lot more adaptive towards the left than the right. That is one thing. And the second thing is, if you go down from the beginning, in the very beginning, if you go down, then to come up, it takes a lot of effort. Just to get back to the same level of medium, you end up wasting a lot more questions. And then to reach even higher, you need a lot more questions correct. So that's the whole difference. Again, I'm not able to, I'm not going into the depth of that. But if you look at the simpler example that we took earlier, that also showed us the difference. And added on to that is that GMAT is a lot more adaptive in the beginning than in the end. So that is another difference. Got it? Great, Karan. I'm happy to know that. So what I wanted to tell you here is that you have to look at the ability of the student to get the medium hard questions right. And not just that, even in the third quarter, if you look at that, the accuracy of the difficulty level of the questions that he was getting right was somewhere in medium hard. Okay. But if you look at the first student, he was getting only medium, in fact, easy medium questions right in the third quarter. So it doesn't make a difference. GMAT felt that the student is not able to get the questions right. They did not serve him hard questions at all. So what I wanted to tell you was that, again, we can skip this. This ESR is even like for the verbal 21, you can see his accuracy was decent, but still he was not getting hard questions at all. So what I wanted to tell you was that accuracy is the wrong metric to look at in GMAT. You have to look at skill. What is important is that which questions do you get right? You should be able to build the skill to get a question of any difficulty level correct. You should be able to get the hard questions and medium questions right also. So Sudeep, how to differentiate between easy, medium, and hard questions? See, if you are saying if you are asking how to differentiate on the day of the test, you cannot. Trust me. Like unless you are very expert, it's very difficult, and I won't recommend you to do that either. But if you're asking during your prep how you should differentiate it, then probably you can, like generally most of the standardized courses out there will actually provide you easy metric to check the difficulty level of each question type. So that is something which most of the courses do. GMAT also provides you a very clear-cut demarcation of the question difficulty levels from time to time. Okay, so that is something which is there. You can actually look at it. Okay, so what actually skill means is that you should be able to get a question of any difficulty level correct. That's the main thing. Now, what does a level of less than 550 signify? So if you are someone who is right now at the level of less than 550, what it basically means is that you are actually even struggling with easy questions. In the easy questions also, your accuracy is somewhere around 70%, not even more than that. And in the medium questions, your accuracy is pretty low. It's somewhere around 30%. Because of that, you are not able to see the hard questions. Okay. So Sudeep, OG's difficulty level, OG has the questions of multiple different difficulty levels. Most of the questions in the OGs are easy and medium. There are very few hard questions in the OG. So OG is not really representative of for someone who is targeting a 700 plus score. So basically for someone who's scoring 550 or less, if you're in this range, it basically means you're struggling with easy questions also, and you're definitely struggling with medium questions. And it means that you're struggling with your concepts. So those of you who want to improve your score, if you're in this score range, it means you have to work on your conceptual knowledge also. That is very, very critical. Now let's look at the other score range. What does it mean that if you're in the range of 550 to 650, what does that signify? What it signifies is that you are able to get the easy questions correct. About 80 to 90% accuracy is there in easy questions. Okay. And in the medium questions, your accuracy is somewhere about 60 to 70%. You're not very consistent. You get them right, you sometimes don't get that right. So it's fluctuating in medium questions, but still comfortable. But because of this fluctuation, you don't get many hard questions. And even when you get those hard questions, you're only able to get 30 to 50% accuracy over there, because of which the algorithm does not serve you more and more hard questions. Now, when this happens, it basically means you are actually struggling with application, because if your concepts were a problem, your score in easy questions will also be very low. Your score in medium questions will also be very low. So conceptual knowledge is fine, but you're actually struggling to apply those concepts using a methodical approach. So probably you're not following the right method to solve questions, and that's what you need to improve. Okay. So Abhijit says, what about advanced OG questions? Advanced OG has most of the questions of advanced OG are 700 plus level. The general OG is a lot more easier. So here has a question: can we any topic-wise focus spread across easy, medium, and hard? I did not get your question completely, but what I probably want to say that does some topics come from easy and some specific topics come from medium, like that? If that is the question, then probably that is not something that happens. Any topic can come on easy and any topic can come on medium questions. Okay. Vartika says, how can we get the hard OG bank from? Where can we get it? So it should be available on mba.com, Amazon also. It should be easy to get it. Can we rely on GMAT Club for 700 scores? So Jaya, again, it's not about relying on a particular website or the other. See, it is more important to actually do the right things. If you're, as I said, if you're just practicing questions, that doesn't mean that you will get it right. What you need to focus on is your application skills and your concepts fine? Because that is what it takes you to a final score. No website can actually take you to a final score. No website can guarantee that for you unless you're doing the right thing. So let's focus on what is the right thing, and then you can do whatever like website you want to go to. Okay, so that is the first thing that we need to focus on. Now, if you look at the two categories that you talked about, score below 550 and the score between 650 and 650, the difference in these two categories is, and why I'm talking about it is because some of you might be in one of these two categories. In the first category, if you are falling in the first category, you're not getting hard questions at all. In the second category, on the other hand, you're getting the hard questions, but you're not able to get them right. You're struggling to get them right. So basically, the first objective for people in the first category should be to make the algorithm serve you hard questions. And for people in the second category, the objective should be to get the hard questions right. Okay. So Yashpreet is completing Sriya's question. So Yashpreet says that if we can practice topic based on easy, medium, and hard questions. So yeah, so that is generally available on some of the good websites. GMAT Club, you can do that. And on GMAT Viz also, you have that option. But again, Just practicing is not going to help. So we have to first focus on the right thing. So let me talk about that, and then yeah, practicing is the last thing that you should do, guys. Okay. So how do we make the algorithm serve the hard questions? In order to do that, we have to get a very high accuracy on easy and medium questions. Okay. And in order to get the hard questions right, see, first thing can be achieved through a solid understanding of concepts. If your conceptual understanding is sound, you should be able to get the algorithm to serve you hard questions. But in order to get the second one done, which is to get the hard questions right, it is important that you learn the right skills and learn how to apply them. Many people don't focus on skill building. They just focus on solving more questions, and that's the problem. So in order to get a 700 plus, you need to have a very, very high accuracy in easy to medium questions, about as close as 90%, I would say, as possible. In fact, not even 80. In easy questions, you can need to have a 90% accuracy. In medium, 80 to 90%. And in hard questions, you can still have a slightly lower accuracy and get there. Okay. So Sunil, I can understand. We have worked with many people who have been stuck with a score of 680, even 700 for a long time. And we have been able to push their score to a 740 or more with our help. Again, I'm going to tell you what to do today, and you can get in touch with me later on as well if you want to discuss in depth what is supposed to be done. But what you need to understand is that, again, I'm coming back to the same point which I discussed a little while earlier, that only practicing questions and taking mock tests will basically make you repeat it unless you know what is the mistake that you're making and you're working on that mistake. But if you actually identify the right skills, work on the right skills, and then practice questions, that will get you to your target score. That will get you to success. So it is important to learn the right skills. Now, the problem with skills is most people think skills is all about learning concepts. That, okay, if I learn concepts, I'll be able to solve questions. But that's not what it is. In reality, skill is a combination of concept plus application. Now, what does application mean? Application basically means like a methodical approach that you have to follow to solve questions. For example, if I want you guys, let me ask you guys to actually solve this question. Okay, this is a question, linear equation question in two variables. How will you guys go about and solve it? Can you tell me that in the chat over here? Can you tell me that in the chat over here? How will you solve this question? Okay, Yashpreet says multiply by 2. Suresh says elimination. Good. Elimination method. Okay, great, guys. So every one of us probably will use the similar method, right? We'll probably equate the coefficient of x to get to make it easy for us to eliminate x in the second step. And in the third step, we will actually replace y to get the value of x, right? 3 simple steps you follow on any question, you will always get to the same answer. Any set of linear equations in 2 variables, we always apply these methods, we always get to the same answer. We can probably solve this question in another manner. Like we can probably substitute random values of x, random values of y. Try as x as 1, x as 2, x as 3, x as 4, and so on, and see whether we are able to hit something or not. But we don't do that. Why don't we do that? Why do we not fit values randomly? The reason for that is very simple. We know that if you follow a methodical approach, you will definitely get to an answer, and you will get to an answer in an organized manner in the shortest possible time. However, if you are not following a methodical approach, you might take eternity to get to the answer. You might not even be able to get to the answer. And we know that. And that's why we try and follow this methodical approach to solve this particular question. But what happens is, in reality, many of the times, in not just in verbal, even in quant, many times we do not learn a methodical approach to solve every question type. We learn a methodical approach for some questions. We don't follow a methodical approach for some other questions. And that's where many people struggle. Okay. And in fact, this is much more popular in verbal. This happens much more in verbal. For example, in RC, if I ask people what is that people do in RCs, the most common approaches I hear from them, number one is that, okay, I read the first line and the last line of every para, and I jump to the questions directly so that I know which para is talking about what. And then when I jump to the questions, I can actually just read that particular para. That is one thing which people do. The second approach which I hear, and this is the most common approach, by the way, which I hear from students, is I read the passage quickly under 2 minutes. I try to read the passage quickly so that I know what is lying where. I kind of try to create a mental map of the information which is there, and then I take then I come back to the passage for every question. One more approach is people say is that they read the question first, and so they know what they're looking for. But in reality, none of these approaches work, because there's no method. There's no method to this madness. They are just most of these approaches focus on saving time. You're just reading stuff randomly. In RC, the most common problems that people face is they're confused about the meaning of the passage. They need to refer back to the passage multiple times, and even then, they are low on confidence when they're marking the answers. A good point, Vartika. Vartika says analyze the paragraph and then move to questions. More time on paras than questions. That is the right thing to do. But very few people do that because they don't really understand what RC tests. See, many times when actually you hear someone saying that, okay, in RC you have to just read the first para, first line, second line, or you have to just skim. Many times those people don't even know like what RC is really testing. They think that RC is about a retail question. A detailed question is something which is written clearly in the passage. So if something is written clearly in the passage, then this shortcut-driven approaches will work. They will work perfectly because that is written in the passage. Why do you want to read all the detail and unnecessarily keep those in your mind? Those kind of passages are not tested on RC. Those kind of questions, those kind of questions are not tested on GMAT RC. They're tested on IELTS RC. For example, if you go for an IELTS test, you will have detail related questions. But on GMAT RC, 85% of the questions that you get are inferential in nature. Only 15% questions are detail based questions. Rest of them are inferential. What do I mean by inferential questions? Inferential questions are not directly written in the passage. You have to infer from the information that is being provided. You have to read between the lines to understand that. So most of these questions will be like this. Which of the following is the author most likely to agree with? What is the function of the word Renaissance? You have to understand the function, the reason why. Which of the following is against the author's opinion? And things like this. So basically, these questions ask your understanding, test your understanding of the why, not the what. Okay? It does not test your understanding of what is written. It tests your understanding of why is it written. And you have to read between the lines in order to do so. And the worst part is GMAT on the 700 level questions will try to trick you by giving you global inference questions. Now, what is a global inference question? Global inference question is a question that actually can be inferred by combining multiple pieces of the passage together, which not necessarily lies in one place. And when you actually skim through the passage and you just refer back to a particular part of the passage, what you do is you end up getting stuck with the local inference or local things which are there. And in many cases, what will happen is GMAT will give you one answer choice, which is similar to something which is locally written in a particular paragraph. And people pick on that. Okay, people pick on that choice because they don't understand that it can be a global inference question also. Okay, so Chinero, you can actually get to a 700 plus level even if you are starting at a 400. We have seen people able to do that. Don't worry about that. So the appropriate approach, Saba, is actually to ensure. I'll talk about the appropriate approach. Don't worry about that. So the appropriate approach for RC I'll come to, but I'm just gonna take it another step, that how do you build the approach for, like, and let me take the example of critical reasoning in this case, that in the right frame of mind, if you want to really get a high accuracy on GMAT, it is very important that you do pre-thinking for CR. Okay, Vartika has a question. Could you please repeat this global local inference? Okay, so Vartika, what I wanted to say was that on 700 level questions, the information, the correct answer can be related to multiple parts of the passage. So if you are just skimming through the passage and you refer back to only a particular part for a particular question, then you might not be able to understand something which is related to other parts of the passage. For example, let's say there is the question is taking some information from first para and the second para, and then an answer is derived from it. But when you're rereading the passage, you only look at the second para. You don't read the first para. So what will happen? if there is an option choice which is related to even the second para and it is just partially correct, it is not completely correct, you will probably mark that as the answer. And you will miss out on something which is derived from the first and second para altogether, completely. That can be only possible, that is only possible if you actually read the passage in the first go properly, not skim through it. Okay, I hope that clarifies the difference. So basically, in order to improve your scores, like now I'm transitioning slowly to the part where I talk about what students should do. So till now I was talking about what most people do. Now I'm talking about how you should go about improving your score. So first thing which is important is you have to build the right skills. You have to build the right skills. Now, what do I mean by right skills? For example, in CR, it is very, very important that you build the pre-thinking approach. You start solving questions using pre-thinking. It is the most efficient way. You should not just read the question and jump to the options and pick one of the answers, because if you do that in CR, you'll always be confused. And pre-thinking doesn't mean that you have to pre-think the answer. Pre-thinking has a step-by-step approach also. In the first step, it is very important as you read the argument, you should understand the argument and the scope of the conclusion. In most cases, trust us guys, in most cases, people are not even able to understand what is the right conclusion also. They think the right conclusion always comes at the end. Not necessarily. The conclusion could be the very first line of the argument also. And that is why your understanding of the argument becomes very, very important. So you have to understand the argument, you have to understand what is the conclusion, and then you have to go one step further and understand what is the scope. Scope is basically something that affects the conclusion closely. That affects the conclusion. Understand this part. The scope, any part of the premise which affects the conclusion closely is the scope. In most of the cases, you will see a limited in scope or out of scope answer choice. Again, this is not a CR webinar, so I'm not getting into the detail of it. But what I want to say is the first step is the most important, that you clearly understand the conclusion and you understand what parts of the premise are actually impacting the conclusion. And then and then only you can pre-think the answer, because once you understand what is the scope, you are able to understand that, okay, this part of the premise impacts my conclusion. Then you are able to understand the gaps between them, and that helps you in pre-thinking the answer. And after that only you should eliminate the answer choices, incorrect answer choices. In fact, if you really want to make pre-thinking easy, you should actually focus on some of the common form of arguments that are tested on GMAT. On GMAT, when we did our in-depth research to identify what are the most common form of arguments which are tested, and we found that GMAT tests you on 4 broad argument types. Okay, plan and goal, comparison, causality, and quant-based. In each of these argument types, you can actually pre-think in a certain manner. There's a methodical approach that can be followed to pre-think. We call it a framework-driven pre-thinking that can be followed. I'm just going to give you an example over here, for example, for like causality. So if there is a causal argument, what you need to do is when you are doing step 1, when you are understanding the argument better, you focus on the cause. Try and identify, and let's replace the cause as X, okay? And you focus on identifying the effect. Let's replace the cause as effect as Y. So the argument is simply, in simple terms, the argument is stating X causes Y. In that case, there are 3 lines in which we can pre-think. These 3 assumptions are always there in that case. If X causes Y, then X should have happened before Y. Second thing is that it should be no alternate cause for Y. The third thing is no reverse causality should exist. Y should not cause X. Okay. So these are 3 pre-thinking three assumptions that you can pre-think right away the moment you see a causal argument. And it works every time. And in most of the cases, you will find the answer choice in one of these categories. And in similar fashion, you can pre-think for plan and goal, comparison, causality, and quant-based. At GMAT-Viz, we talk about all these steps, all these frameworks in depth in our course. Okay, so if you want to learn about this, you can look at the GMAT-Viz course. If you're already a GMAT-Viz student, you will get to learn this. Please make sure that you are following this methods every time. In simple terms, the right method to solve question, again, Sabah, this is answered. This is the answer to your question. The right method to answer sentence correction question is the meaning-based approach. You have to learn the meaning-based approach in order to get the questions right. In CR, as I said already a little while earlier, it is pre-thinking. You have to focus on pre-thinking to get the questions correct. In RC, it is involved and evolved reading. And in, sorry, my bad. Wait a second, what happened? Just give me 1 second, guys. I think I'm gonna reshare my screen because something happened. I just somehow went to the end of the screen. Just give me 1 second. So in CR, pre-thinking is the best approach, as I was talking about. I'm gonna share my screen now. And okay, I hope it should be visible to everyone now. So CR pre-thinking is the best approach. In RC, involved and evolved reading is the best approach. So Anubhav, involved and evolved reading is basically making sure that you focus on the why aspect of the passage. You just don't read the passage passively, you read the passage actively. Try to place yourself in the author's shoes. Understand what is the author trying to achieve. In most cases, we get so engrossed in the detail that we actually lose track of what is the author trying to do. You have to continuously see the passage from the author's side, that okay, which opinion here is the third party opinion, which fact here is just a fact, and what is the author's take on individual entities. That is involved and evolved reading. It is explained in depth in our GMAT-Viz online course. You can check it out. So CR, pre-thinking, involved and evolved reading for RC. For data sufficiency, drawing inferences or pre-analysis is what you need to do. And for PS, there is a 3-step process that we follow. Now, if you want to learn these methods, we are going to help you in that. We're actually starting a 13-week online crash course. This crash course is basically meant for those people who are targeting to achieve a score of 700 plus before round 1. So if you're looking at round 1 applications, this is the course for you, where what we are doing is we are actually starting a live online classroom where it's a very, very organized method of learning. What we do here is that every weekday there will be some part of our homework which will be assigned for you to complete from the online course. And in the online course, you have 100 plus hours of video lectures. Okay, so those things are there, and it also has 4,000 plus practice questions. So on the weekdays, you will basically be going through the online course to complete a certain homework at your end and build a solid understanding of a few topics. Then on the weekends, every weekend on Saturday and Sunday, on the evenings, you will have a couple of 2 sessions live with an expert, where the expert will talk about the advanced application of the same concept. So we will be taking up questions, 700 level questions on those topics, and we will be solving the questions with you to help you understand what is the right method to solve those questions. And this is a batch that the first class, there are going to be 25 sessions happening in this batch. The first class of this batch is happening on 24th of April. But if you're really interested in joining this, I would recommend you to join it by tomorrow itself, if possible, Sunday 17th itself, because you will have to complete the online homework also for the first class, which will require you to take 5-6 days of effort. And the second reason is we are also offering it for a price of $349 only for the first 10 students. Okay, so it is very, very at a very affordable price as of now. If a good number of people already subscribe to it, like 10 plus people subscribe to it, we are going to increase the price to $399 also. So you can check this out. I'll just quickly give you guys the link to check out the crash course. Just give me a minute, guys. So I'm going to give you guys the link to check out our crash course also over here in just a second. So here's the link, guys. You can check out the crash course over here. So yeah, the homework completes 100% of the course. That is true. Thanks, Yashveet, for chiming in. Jaya says, should we understand the meaning after every para in RC? Not after every para, Jaya, after every part of every sentence, basically. Okay. So Yashveet, the fees is in US dollars. Yes, that is the fees, basically. Okay. So any one of you who has any questions about the crash course can reach out to me later on as well on piyush@gmatviz.com, or you can also schedule a call with me. I'll share the link to schedule a call also. And I've shared the link to check out the crash course on the comments over here. So anyone who is interested can look it out. So this crash course is basically going to help you learn all the best techniques overall. Okay. So Shreya has a question: which mocks are most representative at the actual GMAT? If you ask me which is the most representative, I would say obviously the official mocks. Nothing comes close to that. just you need to adjust your score by about 20 points because quant in official mock sometimes tends to be a little easy. Okay. So this is the link to schedule a discussion with me in case you have any queries about the crash course. You can do that. Say the duration of this crash course, the live classes will run for 13 weeks, which is 3 months, and you have the access to the online course and the recordings of this live class for 4 months overall. Okay. So Adine, we recommend verbal course before quant because one thing at a time, if you do that, is much more efficient. What about those under 600 level courses? So Orleans, it's not that we are not covering under 600 level. On the weekdays, when you are doing the homework, you are covering the concepts and the application. You're doing a lot of questions which are of 600, 700, 500, all difficulty levels. In the weekend webinars, we focus more on application and it's a lot more advanced. So we focus more on the hard questions overall. Okay. So Jaya, you cannot still apply for 2021 admissions. It is too late for you to now look at 2021 admissions. You can only look at 2022 admissions now. So Vartika, yes, in the crash course, we are doing verbal first, then quant, because most of the working professionals are not able to do both parallelly. So we are doing verbal first, then quant in crash course. So now let's talk about the second part of our webinar, where let's build up the strategy to improve your scores. Now, what we should do. So I'm dividing the stages of improvement into 3 parts: planning stage, learning stage, and solidifying stage. So let's talk about the planning stage. Now, how should you start? So one thing which I recommend is that you should focus on one section at a time. Don't try to improve both your quant and verbal parallelly. If you are a retaker, it makes sense for you to start with your weaker section. And that is the same thing which probably Vartika was asking as of now. Now, you have to approach the different sections in a different manner. You have to approach quant differently than verbal because they require 2 different skill sets altogether. Verbal, for instance, in verbal, you have to do one module at a time. For example, a module basically to me is sentence correction, critical reasoning, and RC. Don't try to work on all 3 things at a time. So in case you are actually looking at let's say improving your verbal right now, you're working on the verbal part, just focus on the modules, like one of the modules at a time. Don't work on SCCR and RC parallelly. Okay. So focus on developing just one module at a time. That is something which you should do. Let's look at quant. In quant, on the other hand, you should do one topic at a time. You should not do modules. Modules in quant are word problems, algebra, and so on. Because in quant, modules are interrelated. A question from algebra can actually require some understanding of number properties or even word problems and vice versa. But in verbal, that doesn't happen. So in verbal, you go module wise. In quant, you have to go topic wise. Topic means prime numbers, functions, etc. So let's start with verbal first. Let's understand how do you improve your verbal score. So in order to improve your verbal score, create a benchmark of 70 percentile and take a module wise test to identify which topic lies in which area. Okay. So which topic lies in which area? So in group 1, the topics which fall in group 1 should the modules which fall in group 1 are where your score is less than 70 percentile, and top module where your score is more than 70 percentile lies in group 2. For example, let's say in SCCR and RC, these are your scores. So obviously SC is a strong area and CR and RC are the weak areas. They are in group 1 and SC is in group 2. Okay. So you should do CR and RC first and then work on SC. This is how you should order your improvement in verbal. Let me ask you guys, is this point clear to all of you? Quick yes no in the poll over here. Is this point clear to all of you? So Akshay has a question. This way we'll be able to have ample time for practice if someone is targeting exam in late July. Yes, Akshay, you will have ample time. Don't worry about that. Even I guess you're talking about the crash course. The crash course, all the quant and verbal classes are getting over by second week of July itself. And it's not that you're not doing extra practice during the crash course classes. There will be some extra practice that will be done. There is some buffer added in between for that. So don't worry about that part. Okay, great. I'm seeing 100% yes on the previous poll. So I'm happy that all of you are clear with this part. Great. Now, how do you tackle modules from a weak area? So basically modules from your weak area are CR and RC. Okay. Manish, you should not categorize do RC before CR in any case. Even if your RC score is 30%, Let me write it here. Just give me a second, guys. Wait. Even if your RC score is wait, I think there's some problem with my pen. Just give me 1 second, guys. So what I was saying is that even if your score in RC is 30% and CR is 50%, then also you should not do RC first, because there is a skill of analytical reasoning which is tested in CR and it is tested in RC as well. So if your analytical reasoning is weak, even then, in that case, you should first work on CR. So I would say if CR and RC are both in your weak area, then CR should be done before RC. Okay. So, Vartika, benchmarking 70% you can do from the Quizard, or if you've taken any mock test, you can get the benchmarking from there. Okay. Now let's talk about how to tackle your weak areas. In this sense, CR and RC are weak areas for the student. So if you are something in a weak area, what you need to do first is take a sectional test of 20 to 30 questions from it. If you have already taken one, you use the data over there and filter topics where your score is less than 60%. Okay. When I say topics, I mean, for example, in CR topics could be assumption, boldface. In SC, the topics could be modifiers and pronouns, so on. So filter the topics where your score is less than 60%. For this particular topics, you have to revisit the concepts and then you should practice to solidify your understanding. So first revisit these concepts where your score is less than 60%. Okay. Now, in order to improve on your weak areas, ideally 30 to 40 hours of effort is required, which will improve your verbal score by about 4 points and overall score by about 30 points. Now, what about your strong areas? So if something is there in your strong area, and this is something which you also have to do for the weak area, this is common between both of them, you have to learn the right approach and master it. Now, how do you learn the right approach? For example, in CR, I talked about the pre-thinking approach. For SC, it is understanding the intended meaning and eliminating answer choices with identifying errors and then evaluating the remaining answer choices. So you have to learn the right approach and you have also to master this approach. Now, how do you learn the approach? In order to learn the approach, you need to understand the steps involved in it, which if you are a GMAT student, it will be there in your course in a very, very organized manner. And then you should solve 15 questions, taking one question at a time, because you're just understanding or learning the method now. So it should not solve multiple questions. Do one question at a time and review the solution of that particular question right away, so that you're able to see the deviation between your understanding of how you solved it and the exact understanding of how it should have been solved. The focus here should be on the explanation of step 1, step 2, and step 3 properly. Okay, so this is very, very important overall. Okay, so Akshay says if someone needs to have clarity on grammar part and concepts which is needed in RCR and RC doesn't, he took SC first. So Akshay, again, the example that we took, in that case, the student was already at 80% in SC. So if you are at a 70+%, you definitely have a good understanding of the concepts. Okay. Obviously, if you are weak in those grammar part and concepts, your score in SC will be much lower. Your score will be around 40% or 50%. So obviously, it will come in your weak areas. If it is in your weak areas, you need to do SC first. That is for sure. The order should be SC, CR, then RC. If all of them are in one bracket. So if all of them are in weak areas, SC, then CR, then RC is what you do. If two of them are in weak areas, let's say SC and RC are in your weak areas, then you should do SC first and then RC. Okay, I hope that clarifies it. So this is how you basically focus on learning the right method. Jaya, if you're looking at sentence correction, the best resources, one of them would be GMAT. So you can look at our course. We have tried and made sure that the meaning-based approach is very, very well designed and taught to the students. Okay. Now, in order to learn this approach, the challenge that students face is that most of the solutions are not very methodical. Like most resources focus on just telling which option choice is right, which one is wrong. And at best, they tell you what is the error with each option choice. They don't tell you a methodical solution to help you understand how to go about each and every step in an organized manner. So that is something which most of the resources lack. And in order to cover up that gap, at GMAT-Viz, we came up with this idea of creating the solutions using a very, very methodical approach. Okay, so in the course, we have created every single solution in a very organized, in a very methodical manner. And we spend twice the time in writing the solutions than we spend on creating the question, because we want it to be so methodical that when you go through the solution, you're able to identify the errors. Okay, Hitakshi, if you are taking the crash course, you get access to our entire online course, which gives you access to 5 mock tests. Okay, so Jaya, again, if you are looking at best resources for SC on for free, again, the best resources which are there are all paid. If you are asking for the best out of the ones which are free, then I can't think of anything, trust me, because all the books are also paid. Like you have to buy those books as well. But if you're able to get hold of books, probably there is a SC Grail by Aristotle, which I've heard is decent enough overall. So we have come up with the idea of a concept booster in our course, where you actually solve one question at a time, and then you analyze the solution to identify the gaps in your application. And each question in the concept booster is handpicked and covers a different aspect altogether. So this is something which will help you improve your approach. Okay, so again, you can see in every topic there are these concept boosters which are there. These are application focused files, specially designed for application itself. Now, once you have understood how to apply the concepts, you have to master that. How do you master that? You have to then solve 30-40 questions using the same approach. And the idea is, if you internalize the approach right, then it will automatically help you to reduce your time also. In fact, when you're learning the approach initially, you should not worry about timing, because the thing is, if you're learning the right approach, initially it takes you a little more time. It is just like learning a new skill. Whenever you learn a new skill, it takes you a little more time to learn it. But if you internalize that approach, it automatically helps you to improve your timing. It automatically reduces your timing. So what you should do is practice 30-40 questions and focus on internalizing the approach. That will help you to reduce the time. And for all these questions, you have to review the solutions to ensure that you are thinking in the right direction every point of time. Okay, this is very, very critical, guys, for every single thing. Now, in order to improve on your stronger areas, for example, SC was a strong area that I talked about for that particular student, you spend about 15-20 hours, and it should help you improve on your strong areas, and it should improve your overall verbal score and overall score as well. So if you have 2 modules in your strong area, you can improve those 2 modules with 30-40 hours of effort, and it will help you improve your verbal score by 4 points and GMAT score by 30 points. Now with that, let's move to how to improve the quant score. So in order to improve your quant score, identify areas of improvement first. Okay, and this is very, very important. You have to set a baseline. How do you set a baseline? Take a 30-question quiz, each on number properties, word problems, algebra, and geometry. So first take a 30-question quiz on each of them. The idea is to have a fair representation of different topics. Okay, now identify whether you need to work on concepts or application. Okay, that is something, because the idea is, if your score in a particular topic, when I say topic, I mean prime numbers, circles, these are topics. So if your score in a particular topic is less than 60%, it means that you have conceptual gaps in that particular topic, and you need to improve and work on those conceptual gaps first. And if your score is between 60 and 85%, it means you have application gaps. You understand the concepts, but you don't know how to apply those concepts. Okay, so Mehak, if you want to take this quizzes, there, like on GMATWiz platform, we have this option of customized quizzing, where you can create customized quizzes and take this from our Quizard platform. If you're not a GMATWiz student, you can probably look at it as a course, or you can take it, like take a quiz, create a quiz from like the official guide questions, but you have to ensure that you have a fair representation of all varieties of questions. So that is something which is important. At GMATWiz, it will be very easy for you to do that, because when you create a 30-question quiz, it will automatically give you all type of questions, all topics overall. Okay, Orleans, good question. The 30-question ideally should be a mix of easy, medium, and hard. But if your target score is less than 700, around 600, 650, then you can just take off easy and medium questions also. Okay, so this is how you set a baseline first. Once this baseline is set, you have to work on different areas differently. For example, in areas where you have conceptual gaps, you need to first learn the concepts and formulas. First, you need to work on that so that your concepts are taken care of. Then you need to learn how to solve questions, and then you should practice 15 to 20 questions. However, if you have application gaps in something, there you don't need to work on concepts and application. You have the concepts fine, because the score is 60 to 85%. there you need to just learn how to solve questions methodically. The methodically part is important. Probably the method that you're using is not right. And then you have to practice about 10 to 15 questions over here. Okay, so this is how you should tackle different topics in quant. Let me ask you guys, is this part clear to all of you? Is this part clear to all of you guys? Is this part clear to all of you? Okay, I'm not seeing any vote as of now. Is this part clear to all of you guys? Okay, great. I'm so happy to see the results. All right, so let's move to the next part then. So basically, once you have classified all these topics, don't do those topics randomly. I would recommend that you should do the topics in this particular order. Arrange all these topics in this order on which you have to work on. So for example, let's say you saw that in divisibility and remainder, you have conceptual gaps. Okay, so don't just work on divisibility and remainder first. You have to work on all the other topics which come before it. For example, if prime numbers is another area in which you have application gaps, then you have to work on prime numbers before the conceptual, like you work on divisibility and remainders. So in simple terms, this is the order in which you should arrange all the topics. Now, if you want, you can take a screenshot of this. I'm going to keep the screen open for a minute. Otherwise, if you are a GMAT student, this is the same order in which you will be learning every single thing in the course. The AI will recommend you this automatically. And this is order which we have created, keeping in mind the interdependence of topics on each other. So for example, if there's a more advanced topic which requires you to be good at a few of the other topics, we have kept those few other topics before the advanced topic. So this is the most logical order in which you can go about it. Okay, so let's move forward. So how can GMAT help you? Basically, if you don't want to put in this much effort, we have an AI driven course which will actually do all this for you automatically. It will automatically take diagnostic quizzes at the right time, at the right place, and it will identify whether you already know some concepts or not. If you know some concepts, it will automatically take you to the concepts that you are weak in and only focus on those, and then you will go to the booster lessons. So this is something which is automatically happens on GMAT. It's an AI driven course. So in quant in general, if you want to improve by about 1 point, it takes you about 8 to 10 hours of effort, and overall about 3 to 4 points of improvement can be done about with 40 hours of effort approximately. So to summarize, what you need to do is step 1, start working on quant or verbal. Don't work on both things parallelly. Do work on one thing first if you want to improve your score quickly. In verbal, create 2 groups. First group is where your score is less than 70, and the second group is where your score is greater than 70. So for group 2, you have to build the right application skills only, and in group 1, you have to work on both concepts as well as applications. So clearly, you need to work on group 1 first and then work on group 2. Overall, 60 to 80 hours of effort should get you 8+ points boost and about 60 points jump in your overall score. Step 3, for quant, work on weak concepts. About 25 to 40 hours should get you 4 points improvement, about 40 points overall. So this is what you do in order to improve your score by 100+ points in 40 days. So in case I'm reached to the end of this webinar where I'm opening it for a Q&A session where you can ask any questions that you want. But in case you want to reach out to me later on to discuss your queries, you can schedule a discussion with me using this link, which I'm going to share now. And I'm also available on this contact details. You can also mail us on piyush@gmatviz.com, or you can also reach out to me on this WhatsApp number, which is mentioned over here. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions now. I'll be open to taking up any queries that you may have as of now. So feel free to let me know that. Okay, I don't see any questions as of now. I would wait for a couple of minutes to see if ask any questions. Okay. Okay. You're welcome, Yashpreet. I'm happy to know that you found the webinar helpful. Thank you, Vartika. I'm happy to know that you also found it helpful. Akshay, don't worry. I'm happy to know that you have found the GMAT course helpful, but the crash course is even gonna be much better. I'm sure you'll enjoy every session thoroughly. Okay, Akash says, I'm at the age of 35 working with state government for the last 8 years. Now, if I want to do an MBA, then according to you, is it wise to do MBA at this age? Age is an issue for placement. Akash, age is definitely an issue for placement. I won't disagree with that. But what you need to look at is what you expect from an MBA. Like, is it just a better job or is it also learning? Generally, people with your kind of work experience have connections in the industry who know that they can get placed if you actually upskill yourself, get a degree which helps you understand the better aspects of the business, and they're able to place themselves with their connections. Generally speaking, that is the case. Otherwise, you can look at an executive MBA, 1 year MBA, that should help you. My score is 450 is what Orlin says. I've gone through concepts and I know, but I can't solve under pressure. I get confused. So Orlin's, if you know the concepts, you're not able to solve under pressure. It is not just about the timing. It is more about the approach. Probably the method is what you have not have a strong grasp over. So you need to also learn the right methods to solve. Concepts are not just sufficient, because on GMAT, they're not going to ask you what is a prime number. Obviously, they are going to ask you to apply that. So probably the effort that you're following is something that needs to improve. So Vartika is asking, how is online GMAT course different from the crash course? See, Vartika, in the online GMAT course, you don't have live sessions. In the crash course, we are also having live sessions every weekend dedicated on specific topics. So there is a particular schedule that is followed. So you can click on that link which was shared with you earlier to see the calendar. So every week there's a certain part of the online course that you complete, and there are weekend sessions on it where we sit with a set of small set of students where we will work on the advanced application of those things. So in case there is some gap in your understanding of what you understood from the online course and what should have been understood from the online course, that will get clarified in the crash course, because you'll be able to see the tutor solving the questions right in front of you. Okay. All right, so I don't see any other questions. So it was great having you guys. All the best for your GMAT prep. I hope the webinar was helpful and it gave you some insights about how you can go about improving your GMAT score in about a month or so. So all the best. And if you think, and if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me on these details. Okay, I see a few questions already now. What is the difference between 1 year and 2 year MBA program? Again, Pooja, very broad question, to be very honest. Do your research on the website. You'll be able to understand that. But simply put, people with 2 years of who go for a 2 year MBA program don't really know what they want to. In many cases, they don't really know what they want to do. They want to keep their options open. In the first year, understand what is tested, what are the various functions, what is the difference in finance, marketing, operations, and over 1 year they understand what is which sector is where their interest lies. So in the second year they can specialize in it, whereas in the first year 1 year MBA you have to be like very clear about your goals from the very beginning. Okay, so all this method or approach is the same thing. They're not two different things, they're the same thing. I'm constantly getting approximately 550 from last 4 mocks. What approach should I follow to improve my score? So Mehak, this entire webinar was about that. So basically you have to critically analyze each area. Again, understand that first take up quant or verbal one thing at a time and focus on what I said. Take it in that step-by-step manner. We have to understand where the problem lies and work on that. In case you want to discuss that with me directly, you can book a call with me using the link which I provided. I'm going to share this again with you, and I can help you with understanding what your pain points are. Okay, so you can probably schedule a call and I can help you understand that part. Okay, so great guys, I hope this was helpful. All the best and stay in touch. Okay, bye bye.